Well, I think it's important for South Africa.
Die 20ste wolveiling van die seisoen. Ja, baie dankie en goeiedag aan almal wat inluister. Op die 20ste wolveiling van die seisoen wat op 4 Februarie plaasgevind het die Suid-Afrikaanse wolmark weer effens herstel en versterk teenoor die vorige veiling. En die Cape Wool's merino aanwyser het met 2.4% hoër verhandel vir alle merino wol en 2.7% vir gesertifiseerde wol en het teen 'n skoonprys van R233.70 per kilogram en R238.01 per kilogram onderskeidelik gesluit. Die Australiese EMI het ook weer sterker verhandel en het so 0.7% kop opgetel teenoor die vorige veiling. Nou die rede is dan vir die stygings in die Suid-Afrikaanse wolmark is hoofsaaklik as gevolg vir die sterker vertoning van die Australiese mark, asook die verswakking van die rand teenoor die vernaamste geldeenhede tydens die veiling. Nou volhoubare gesertifiseerde wol het so 54.6% van die merino aanbieding uitgemaak, met ongeveer 60% van die totale aanbieding wat bestaan het uit goeie kwaliteit, langer lengtes, fyner mikronwol, wat dan ook gesorg het vir gesonde vraag en kompetisie tussen kopershuise. Nou, die hoogste prys van R291.74 per kilogram skoonwol of R191 per kilogram vetwol is betaal vir 'n 7-baal lot merino wol van 18.2 mikron. Daar is in totaal 7.957 bale aangebied met 'n uitstekende verkoopsyfer weer eens van 96.4% van die totale aanbieding. BKB Pinnacle Fibers het op hierdie veiling die grootste hoeveelheid bale gekoop, gevolg deur Tianyu SA, G Modiano en Standard Wool SA. En dan kyk ons weer na die gemiddelde skoonwolpryse vir goeie lang kamwol of MF5 tipes en dit was dan soos volg. En soos jy weet, onderskei ons altyd tussen nie gesertifiseer en gesertifiseerde wol. Kom ons begin met 17.5 mikron, nie gesertifiseer. R241.98 per kilogram. Gesertifiseer R264.20 per kilogram met 'n premie van 9.2% vir die gesertifiseerde wol dan. Kyk ons na 18 mikron, nie gesertifiseer R239.49 per kilogram, gesertifiseer R265.01 per kilogram met 'n premie van 10.7%. Dan kan ons loer na 18.5 mikron, nie gesertifiseerde wol verkoop vir R238.44 per kilogram, terwyl gesertifiseerde wol 'n prys behaal van R260.03 per kilogram, met 'n premie van 9.1%. En laastens kan ons kyk na 21.5 mikron, nie gesertifiseerde wol verkoop vir R212.22 per kilogram, terwyl gesertifiseerde wol 'n prys behaal van R235.84 per kilogram, met 'n premie van 11.1%. Nou ja, die volgende wolveiling dan is geskeduleer vir 11 Februarie, waar daar sowat 12.425 bale aangebied sal word. 'n Groter veiling dus wat vir ons voorlê. Tot dan, dit is die nuus rakende wolsake, tot ons weer gesels, mooi loop.
It has taken 20 years, but finally the Agricultural Research Council has unveiled its own proudly South African foot and mouth disease vaccine. Plaas Media was also there to attend this momentous occasion. joined now by the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, to discuss more about the impact of the ARC's vaccine. Good day, John. Why is this important for South Africa?
Well, I think it's important for South Africa because it's a very important milestone. This is the first locally produced foot and mouth disease vaccine in 20 years in South Africa. You may recall we lost our FMD vaccine capacity due to the failure of BSL laboratories many years ago. And that's obviously left us vulnerable and having to be reliant on importing vaccines. This is the first step now to getting us back to being vaccine self-sufficient and protecting our own sovereignty on biosecurity.
So let's talk in practical terms. Who is funding the cost of this vaccine?
So the state will fund the cost of the vaccine. Obviously, it's a state-controlled disease. And I want to dispel completely this narrative that's doing the rounds that it's going to cost 300 Rand a vaccine. That's completely untrue. We recommend and reckon that the vaccine will come in at around 45 Rand. What that will do is enable us to roll out at scale. And obviously, the more we purchase internationally, the cheaper the prices will become. So we will roll out at a state level the vaccines. But obviously, if there are schemes and people want to join schemes, so for instance, a feedlot wants to obtain a certain status or deal with issues there on a vaccinate to kill basis, they will obviously be picked up by them themselves, and we will obviously try and facilitate the purchase of those vaccines, as we've been doing over the course of the last 6 to 8 months.
I also want to ask, did the Gates Foundation help with the funding or any other international people?
No, not at all. This is a completely locally funded through the Department of Agriculture and the ARC, and in collaboration with the Department of Science and Technology and a variety of other players, 100% locally produced. I also want to say very clearly that the vaccination drive in South Africa to beat FMD has got absolutely nothing to do with the Gates Foundation. It's got absolutely nothing to do with Jeff Bezos, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum. This is a policy that we have determined to go down as South Africa. We are sourcing vaccines from Argentina and from Turkey, and we will be supplementing it with our local manufactured vaccine. And when the vaccine production gets to the target here of 20 million doses a year, we will obviously then be vaccine independent and would then only need to import if there was a requirement to do so later down the line.
Minister, you said this is a state-controlled disease. That's a term we pick up all the time. Why is it a state-controlled disease, and won't you relinquish that control?
Well, you can't relinquish that control. I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. They keep saying, well, let everyone just do their own thing. The reality is that we are a signatory to a number of international treaties and obligations, specifically to the World Organization of Animal Health and the FAO. And there is a set way in which you deal with handling FMD, which allows you to then move your status from being an FMD endemic country to being FMD free with vaccination, and ultimately our goal to be FMD free without vaccination. And we have to follow those protocols. If you allow just a free-for-all, you don't have in place the surveillance and monitoring that has to follow a vaccination process. And then we will spend all of this money on vaccines, but we won't ever get our status changed with WOHA. So I would also say we've already seen what happens when you have a vaccine free-for-all in KwaZulu-Natal, where some farmers thought it was a good idea to import vaccines from Kenya. And in doing so, could well now have introduced strains that are not endemic here to South Africa, strains outside SAT 1, 2, and 3, which then make fighting the disease even more harder than it is at the moment.
What's happening to those farmers that imported this?
Well, obviously there's an investigation underway. We were lucky the Border Management Authority stopped a number of shipments. The State Security Agency is investigating it, and there will obviously be serious charges against those individuals, particularly if we start to pick up in the field strains that they've introduced other strains into the fight, because then there's a liability that ends up on their desk, and they will be held responsible. there's a reason we have a reference laboratory here at the ARC, and it's to match local strains and to ensure that any vaccines that are imported go through the SHARPRA process, the matching process, and ultimately the authorization process. If you just allowed people to import vaccines, we'd end up with strains that are currently in Europe or the Middle East, and it makes us on the back foot then trying to combat an already difficult situation.
Minister, another part of the difficulties in all of this is our state vets. We already have a shortage of state veterinarians and animal technicians. Is there any strategy to let private veterinarians also vaccinate?
Yes, of course, and I've said right from the very beginning that the private sector is going to have to be involved. The state doesn't have the capacity or volume of state vets and animal health technicians to vaccinate at the scale we need to hit our target of 80% of the targeted herds by the end of the year. So we will be calling on private vets and animal health technicians and veterinary students and others to help us. We're busy working on a protocol because, again, people who administer the vaccine need to understand the exact protocol that has to be followed in order for us to meet our international obligations. And then I think we also need, post that, and I've said, let's get through this crisis, we need to have a discussion about vet services. The Constitution is clear, it's a provincial function. At a national level, veterinary services responsibility is regulation of the industry. And yet the state has had to step, at a national level, has had to step in significantly here. But we do need to settle this once and for all. Things like pounds as well are a concurrent municipal and a provincial function. And I'm very wary about just assuming these functions now when it is the function of another sphere of government. But obviously we're in a crisis now. Let's get through that crisis and we can worry about all of those things afterwards.
Minister, let's just go back to the ARC vaccines. 12,900 vials that's been produced. Where are they going and when will they be distributed?
Well, we're going to start being distributed from today. There's a number of provinces that are going to come and pick up their allocation. Look, 12,900 is a bit of a drop in the ocean, but what we're going to do is use them strategically, and that's at the periphery. KwaZulu-Natal is the epicenter. We're going to vaccinate now in the Eastern Cape around the dairy herds to protect them from, and as a buffer zone to protect them from outbreaks. We're going to be vaccinating on the borders of the Northern Cape and the Northwest so that we can stop it from spreading. Within a week's time, the big shipment of the first Turkish vaccine imported by JuneVax, the Dolvet vaccine, arrives, and that will then obviously be deployed into the frontline fight in those hotspot areas. But this quantity now has to be used to stop the spread. The last thing we want needed is to get into the Northern Cape or the Western Cape, provinces that to date have been FMD free. And so we have to prevent that from taking place. The bulk of the vaccines will then be used on the front line in the epicenter of KZN. Later this month, the BVR vaccine arrives, 960,000 doses. And almost immediately after that, if we can get the SAPRA approval finalized, and we're in the final process of doing that, the Biogenesis Bayer Argentinian vaccine, 2 million of those to come in February and up to 5 million in March, which is going to be more than enough to keep us busy on the vaccination trail for the next few months.
Minister, do I understand correctly that government is going to buy up the Dolvet vaccines?
We're going to prioritise government purchase first. If there's excess, we will make that available to others. But we believe that we have to get on as government to the front line of it. It's imported by a private company, JuneVax, and we will purchase whatever we can from them. But the priority has to be on government procurement first. Whatever's left over or whatever excess we have will then be offered to the industry bodies and the like to be able to roll out in feedlots and other areas.
Minister, can we just talk a bit about the national disaster? If we are able to have this declared as a national disaster,
Yes.
would that give access to greater funding and greater help from the military and the police?
Well, funding's not really the problem. I mean, we've budgeted for the vaccines and I'm very confident we will meet it. Where the disaster will help is with enforcement. as a Department of Agriculture, I don't have a police force that can go out and enforce animal movement and animal control. And we rely on state agencies like SAPS, provincial traffic, national traffic, and the SNDF to help us with roadblocks, stopping movement of animals. And what the National State of Disaster will allow us then to do is to get it on the agenda, because these agencies also have competing requests from transport to help with liquor roadblocks, border management to help with illegal immigration, and a variety of other being pulled in different directions. And agriculture has not really been seen as a priority area in the past to help with, and people haven't realized how damaging the movement of animals can be on an economic basis. And there is still far too much movement taking place. I mean, vaccines, and I think we need to be clear here, are not a silver bullet that's going to resolve all the problems. We still have to have strict animal control movement. We still have to have strict surveillance tied in with the vaccination program. Otherwise, we're not going to get through this. And that is going to require farmers to work with us and to stick to the rules, auction houses, speculators, like to stick to the rules, but also then to get assistance from these agencies to help us with enforcement.
So what would be your main message to farmers at this point in time?
But there's no substitute for biosecurity on your farm. That's the first line of defense. The second one, help is now on the way. The vaccines are coming in big numbers now. We had a delay in December with vaccine. We'd procured 2 million before that. They had been put out in the field. Botswana had to close their factory for a few weeks for cleaning in December. And so we missed out on the batch that had been undertaken to take us through December and beginning of January. But we've now got the vaccines flowing. We're going to keep them flowing onto the front line. Cooperate, help each other, work with government to overcome this. Because at the end of the day, if we can become an FMD-free country, even with vaccination, it's going to open up markets that we've never seen before, that have been closed for decades. It's going to be more entrants can come into the market. There's going to be more of a demand for red meat products in the country and for pork and others, and externally. And I think that if we can bring through this the certainty and stability that's required through the first proactive strategy to deal with FMD in the country in 30 years, and it's implemented to the letter, we will have this as the last major outbreak of foot-and-mouth disease that we ever have.
As you have heard in the reports, we stopped producing vaccine in 2005. And from there onwards, the reason was that our production technology was old. And it could not even meet the demand in terms of capacity of what was now trending. We were seeing an upward trend in vaccine demand and a frequency of outbreaks, but we were unable to meet that because of our old technology of production. So after stopping, the ARC took a strategic decision to embark on research to develop new methods of vaccine manufacturing using bioreactors, suspension cultures. So, and also what we did, we thought it would be better to look for new virus isolates that are circulating out there in the field causing the disease. So we got from clinical material, I think you would know one of the signs of foot and mouth is lesions around the hooves, the tongue. So what we did, we went to clinical infected animals and we took swabs from the tongue, from the lesions, and then brought them back into the lab. So that's when process development starts. And with vaccines, there are very strict regulations that a vaccine, a strain of virus can qualify to become a vaccine strain. I know I'm talking too much technical work, but just follow the story. It will make sense as we go. So what we did after collecting those swabs with virus, potential virus, we started to grow them in the laboratory, what we call in vitro cultivation, because the virus naturally happens in buffalo, in cattle, sheep, goats, we need to teach it to grow outside its natural environment in bioreactors using cell cultures. So that process on its own to grow virus, I think you would agree with me, if you take a swab, what you would get is maybe, let's say, 100 virus particles if you are lucky. So you need to grow them in huge quantities, up to 1 billion virus particles for you to make a vaccine out of it. So we needed to teach the virus to grow and adapt in that type of environment so it grows quicker. We need 1 billion virus particles within 48 hours at most. So when we did that, it's a process that took us maybe 2.5 to 3 years just to get it adapted to growing that. After doing that, we then had to test whether this virus will protect an animal when inactivated. And I think at this point I must mention there are too many different, maybe too many is being overzealous, but there are different types of vaccines. You have attenuated vaccines, you have inactivated vaccines, and you have genetically modified vaccines and or virus-like particles. So this one is an inactivated vaccine. So by inactivation, what we mean is that we just kill the ability of the virus to cause diseases when we inject into an animal. So we just kill that part and then the virus remains as is. It is not modified in any way, so it's still its virus, is not genetically modified or mRNA or nothing. It's just lost its ability to replicate. That's what we mean by that. So after inactivating it, we then test whether by inactivating it, it has not lost its capacity to make an animal get protected, form antibodies against the virus. Not get sick, but form antibodies. Just like I will give you an example we do with flu vaccines. We get flu vaccines, but their aim is not to make us sick. It is just to create memory in our body to say, when we do eventually get the virus, the body say, okay, I remember something that looks like this. And then in my storeroom somewhere in the body, I can deal with this, and then you don't end up getting very sick because your body remembers quickly. So that is the case with the FMD vaccine that we have developed locally. So we did animal studies. First we start with lab animals like your guinea pigs and your rabbits, and then when that is established, we test it in target species, which is now cattle. And those studies take a long time because you need to get pre-approval. There are animal ethics issues that you are not misusing the animals, you are not making animals sick. So that process took us a long time to complete. And after that, inactivated vaccines don't make you immune for the rest of your life. You have to keep on getting vaccinations. And then with this, just like I will go back to my flu vaccine, we get flu vaccines usually at the beginning of autumn. And then we are protected until the next autumn when winter is going to come, similar to FMD vaccine. So we have to establish that once vaccinated, how long does the immunity last before you would need a booster? And to be our major achievement is that we notice our vaccine is so strong, what we call potency in biological terms. It is so strong that the vaccine, after a 2 milliliter injection, the immunity will last you long. Current vaccines that are used now, they have a 4 months to 6 months duration of immunity. But we are tracking ours, and up to 12 months, you're still good to go. And we are so happy with that, in that using our vaccine will allow the country to vaccinate once a year. It is a cheaper option, a more affordable option because getting cattle from feedlots, administration of mass vaccination, it's a challenge. But if people can know that I only need to come once, let's say in September, the next time I come is next September. It is doable for farmers and even communal farmers. So that was our major achievement with regards to this product. And today, although we are releasing our first batch, which is just 12,900, we acknowledge it's a little for what the country needs. But as we have said, our facility design is an old facility, as you see it. It is capacity restrictive. So what we have endeavored to do is get portable production system, single-use system that we can accommodate in the existing facility. But in the background, plans are underway to construct a state-of-the-art facility that will be able to give the ARC an opportunity to manufacture up to 20 million vaccine doses per year. And when that milestone is achieved, South Africa will be fully reliant on itself. We will be able to roll out vaccine as the need come. And we now even have the technical capacity that when new strains arise in the field, we will be able to adapt them, grow them, create an antigen bank of new viruses as they come. And when we have a bank, the good thing about having a catalog of antigen bank is that when there is an outbreak, you just go to your bank, you match what's circulating, and you say, I have antigen. So in a week, vaccines will be rolling out of the facility. So these lag times will be a thing of the past. Yeah, to go back to what I was saying about the capacity restrictiveness of this facility, we are in the process of scaling up. Biological processes are quite tricky, so we usually scale by a factor of 10 all that. So our proof of concept was using the 20-liter pilot scale systems, and that is what gave us the 12,900 doses that we are releasing. So scaling 20-liter, we are now where we will be producing at 200 liters. Then the 200 liters will be able to give us 20,000 doses per week that we are planning to release from the end of March this year. But we are buying even bigger scale bioreactors, as big as the facility can handle. And unfortunately for now, it is a 1,000-liter production system. So that will be able to give us 200,000 doses per week. And that we envisage to have rolling out from next year, 2027. So that is our plan. And it is our plan that in these years, on the months that are coming, we might get commitment funding. We are seeking alternative funding. We are speaking to the government. And when that has been confirmed, we could still be constructing our facility. And while constructing, we are not sitting still. We are still addressing the vaccine needs of the country.
So our facility is a special facility in that we have most of the laboratories that we have within South Africa at a level that we call BSL2, which is the Biosafety Level 2 laboratory. But we are a notch higher. We are BSL3, which means our containment practices are really more stringent, starting from the design of the facility, the air handling systems, with the HEPA filters installed on the system. So we have the highly sophisticated engineering systems on our facility that handles our air supply system and exhaust system, that handles our decontamination systems. So we have our effluent plant that has to decontaminate our waste at a particular temperature before it's released. We have our autoclaves that have to make sure they decontaminate our waste, solid waste from the laboratories before they are taken out of the lab. We also have our incineration on site where we dispose of our waste within that incinerator. So it is a more sophisticated facility compared to the usual BSL2 facility. So we're working with a lot of viruses. So our routine viruses that we work within our diagnostics and research laboratories are foot and mouth disease, African swine fever, and as well as Pestidespetis ruminans, which is commonly called PPR. But like I said, we have a facility that can accommodate animals. So if you are dealing with animal experiments that involves zoonotic agents, we have that capacity to work with those zoonotic agents. So we're talking diseases like Rift Valley fever, we are able to handle it within our facility. Yeah, so we are a World Organization for Animal Health, which is commonly known as WOHA Reference Laboratory, for 2 diseases. We have got WOHA Reference Laboratory for foot and mouth disease. We've got WOHA Reference Laboratory for African swine fever. And we are in the process of getting World Reference Laboratory status for Pestidespetis ruminans, PPR. So for you to be accorded a World Reference Laboratory status, it means you have to have reached a certain level of, firstly, your equipment within your laboratory has got a certain level of sophistication. You have got a certain level of pedigree of your scientists. There are certain numbers of publications that are needed for that to be accorded to you. And you also need to have obviously I mentioned the complicated equipment within the laboratory. So we have an ISO 17025 accreditation system that we follow. With our facility, we do use the South African National Accreditation System, commonly known as SANAS. So all our tests that we offer to our clients are SANAS accredited. So as part of broader strategy to prevent dissemination of viruses from our facility, researchers have got limitations as to where they can go after visiting our facility. So places where cloven-hoofed animals are kept are out of bounds for our employees and our visitors too. So cloven-hoofed animals, these are split-hoofed animals, and typically this will be your cattle, sheep, goats, pigs, and lots of antelopes, all of the antelopes actually, and many other wildlife species. So in essence, we don't allow them to visit farms where these animals are kept, the zoo, hospitals where they are sold, auctions where they are sold, as well as national parks when they are working within the facility. So if you are planning on going to those particular places, you need to stay out of the facility for a period of at least 5 days. This is because we have in experiments that we've conducted shown that even though foot and mouth does not affect humans, there is a possibility that you can breathe it in and it stays active in your throat area for a few days. And when you go close to susceptible animals, which are these cloven-hoofed animals, and you cough or you sneeze, there is a chance that you can spread on the virus to the animals. That's why we stay away from those establishments which have got those species of animals.
Nice bucky. It's not a bucky. It's a Hilux.
It's not a bucky. It's the new Hilux Legend 55.